Ever find yourself lost in a video game for hours? Or maybe just, checking your bank balance online. It got me thinking about this whole virtual reality thing because it's like, we're already kind of living in it, right?
Yeah, and this transcript you sent over, it really drives that point home.
Right. Like it starts off with this simple question, what is virtual reality? But then it takes this whole other turn.
Well, it challenges our assumptions, right? We think VR, we picture those headsets, the gloves, the whole 9 yards. But this transcript, it's saying, hold on, we're already there in a lot of ways.
And one of the examples that really stuck with me was the whole thing about money. Like, where is your money right now? I always want to say, oh, it's in the bank. But is it really? When was the last time you actually, held a wad of cash?
Such a good point. It's like we say in the bank, but it's just numbers on a screen. Our perception of money, it's fundamentally changed without us even really noticing.
Totally. I can't even remember the last time I actually went into a bank branch.
And that shift, going from physical cash to this virtual representation, it has huge implications.
Yeah, like what? Give me an example.
Think about spending habits. It's way too easy to tap your phone to buy something these days. You don't see the money leaving your hands, so to speak.
Oh, 100%. Online shopping, paying bills. It's all so easy. Too easy.
Maybe. But the point is, this virtual money thing, it affects our understanding of value, debt. Even the entire economy is tied into the system.
So we're talking bigger than just technology here. This is impacting, our behaviors.
Exactly. And the source goes beyond just money. It talks about video games as another form of virtual reality.
Which, okay, on the surface, that seems obvious. But the transcript digs deeper.
It makes you think about what makes a virtual reality real.
And they use that example of the Battle of Borodino game, which is interesting.
Right, because even though the graphics are, let's be honest, kind of janky by today's standards.
Yeah, they're pretty pixelated.
But the game, it still tries to recreate the feeling of what it was like to command a battle back then. You have to make decisions, deal with consequences.
It's like its own self-contained reality, which, now that I say it out loud, that's kind of what the source was saying about that whole PowerBASIC thing too, right?
Exact. That part blew my mind a little bit. We think of coding as this very abstract thing, but even the code itself,
It exists in a virtual space.
often running on virtual servers, which are running on some physical server farm somewhere.
Whoa. So it's like virtual reality stacked on top of other virtual realities.
It gets kind of trippy when you think about it too much. But the point is, if the very tools we use to build these digital experiences, the code, if that can exist in this virtual realm, then what are the limits, really?
It's like we're building the metaverse without even realizing it. One line of code at a time.
And that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down.
So we've got our money, video games, even the code itself, all hanging out in this virtual space. Makes you wonder what virtual even means anymore, right?
Right. It's like, where do we draw the line if so much of our lives are already intertwined with these systems?
And not just our leisure time, but our finances, our work.
Exactly. And that's where it starts to get philosophical. Because if all this stuff can be virtual, then what about us?
Whoa, okay, hold on. You're getting deep on me now.
Well, the transcript kind of goes there. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how this virtualization impacts our understanding of the world, of reality itself.
Okay, I'm following.
Yeah.
But, how do we even wrap our heads around that?
It's a process, for sure. But one way to think about it is, look at how quickly things have already changed. I mean, just a couple decades ago, the idea of money existing mostly as digital information.
You would have thought that was crazy.
Exactly. But now here we are. So it begs the question, what's next? What other aspects of our lives are ripe for this kind of transformation?
Okay, so if money can be virtualized, what else can be? Our relationships, our identities.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the source doesn't give us all the answers, but there's this one part where they talk about PowerBASIC.
Yeah, about how even the programming language exists in this virtual environment.
Right, and I think that's a huge clue, because if something as fundamental as code, the instructions for building these digital worlds, if that can exist in the virtual realm.
It's like the building blocks themselves are already there.
Exactly. So imagine the possibilities. It's not about whether virtual reality will become more prevalent. It's about how deep this integration will go.
So it's not a separate thing. It's more like an extension of our reality.
And as that extension grows, it brings up a whole new set of questions about how we interact, how we govern ourselves even.
Even how we define ourselves, right?
Exactly. And I think that's where the source really leaves us with a call to action. We can't just passively consume these technologies.
We got to be aware of their
Yeah,
influence.
because the more we understand how these systems work, the more we'll be equipped to navigate this new landscape.
Awareness, yeah. It's like we got to be conscious participants in all this, not just along for the ride.
And what's really striking, at least to me, is how quickly something as fundamental as money that went from like physical cash to mostly existing in this digital realm.
Right, and in a relatively short time frame when you think about it.
Exactly. And if even the code itself, the very foundation of these digital spaces, is already operating in this virtual environment, it makes you wonder what's next? What else might be on the verge of this kind of transformation?
Okay, now that's a little bit scary, but also exciting. Like we're talking about potentially reshaping huge parts of our lives.
And that's what makes this conversation so important. We might not have all the answers, but we have to ask the questions because the line between virtual and real, it's only getting blurrier.
So if something as concrete as money can become virtual, then what about things like, I don't know, relationships, our sense of community, even our own identities?
Those are the big ones, aren't they? And those are the conversations we need to be having because as this evolution continues, those very foundations of human experience, they're up for grabs.
Wow. Okay, so we started with video games and online banking, and now we're talking about the future of reality itself.
That's the beauty of these deep dives, right? You never know where you're going to end up.
That's for sure. Well, I think the big takeaway here is that this virtual reality thing is bigger than we tend to think. It's not just about the technology. It's about how that technology is changing the way we understand and interact with the world and each other. So to everyone listening, maybe this has sparked some questions for you too. If so, don't let those go unexplored. Keep digging, keep learning, and remember, the future of reality might be a lot closer and a lot stranger than we realize.